This meeting is being live streamed. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and start. The January 27th, 2026 school board
Meeting is
workshop.
being live streamed.
I think you heard the delay there, Franny.
I did. Okay. The January 27th, 2026 school board workshop is called to order. The school board meeting is virtual. The school board is meeting virtually tonight due to inclement weather as authorized by the governor on January 22nd under the Executive Order 11, which remains in effect for the next 30 days and pursuant to the Code of Virginia 2.2-3708.2. Ms. Tresky, please call the roll.
Mr. Cherry,
Here.
Dr. Jamison,
Here.
Mr. Link,
Here.
Ms. Quintana,
Here.
Ms. Trigg,
Here.
Mrs. Watkins,
Here.
Mrs. Apel.
Here. Thank you to all of those that are joining the meeting with us via the RCPS YouTube channel. And I just want to take a moment to implore everyone to continue to be safe, whether walking, driving, or sledding. And again, thank you for participating virtually this evening. We move on to the approval of the agenda. Please note that the agenda being presented for adoption contains the same items, with the only change being the order. The budget report has been moved to the end of the superintendent's reports. Is there a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Quintana, seconded by Dr. Jamison. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. And the motion carries. The agenda is approved. Before we get into the superintendent's updates this evening, I wanted to take a moment to make sure that everyone here with us tonight is aware that City Council did approve the 7th amended school funding policy at their meeting last Tuesday following the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. Vice Chair Cherry and I were in attendance for a large portion of that meeting, as were some executive staff and our superintendent. I want to thank everyone for using their voice to advocate for investing in our students and staff, especially Dr. White, who shared remarks directly ahead of City Council's vote. It is her charge to present a needs-based budget and to advocate for our students and staff and our families, and she did just that. The same can be said of my fellow school board members, and I thank you all for your service on behalf of this school division. I want to take some time here to identify key points regarding the 7th amended school funding policy that Roanoke City Council did approve last week. 1, the school board was not in support of this policy as we feel it will have a negative impact on our division moving forward, as discussed and shared during our joint City Council School Board Finance Task Force meetings, and as was shared with City Council ahead of this vote. Second, RCPS is no longer funded on a percent of revenue basis regarding the city's local share. So instead, the city funding towards RCPS is determined by the prior year's city funds plus this prior year city funding plus a percent of revenue growth or decline. Now, under the prior year's agreements, when there was a percent, our funding did follow the rise and fall of the city's revenue. Now, the baseline for fiscal year 2027 is actually based on fiscal years 2025 funding because fiscal year 26 was level funded in comparison to fiscal year 25. Other changes, the appropriations will be handled quarterly. And another item of note is that it's unclear regarding how encumbrances will work moving forward. And as we have stated multiple times over the last year, RCPS no longer works with a fund balance in the same way regarding future budgeting. So all of this is important as we continue down the path of developing our fiscal year 2027 RCPS budget, and it will be evidenced during the budget development portion of this evening's workshop. I want to remind everyone that education is a process and takes a village. 1 year does not spell defeat nor success in the lives of the education of our students here in Roanoke. This school board is committed to advocacy for what our students and staff and community need, as everyone deserves access to an excellent education. Education is an investment, and I appreciate, and I need to look up the source for this, but credit to Councilmember Hagan, who noted that he has seen it read that for every $1 investment in education, it yields $8 in value. So with that said, I would like to turn it over to our superintendent for her update. Thank you.
Thank you, and good evening, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the school board. This evening, we're bringing forward several items for your information, including an update on community engagement, an update on the School Performance and Support Framework, or the SPSF, and an update on the 2026-2027 budget. Before we get to our agenda items, I would like to thank our students, families, staff, and entire community for their flexibility this week amid the winter weather. Now, knowing that we may be out of school for several days, our team worked together last week to develop remote learning packets and guidance in case of an extended closure. I especially want to thank our assistant superintendents, Dr. Haley Poland and Dr. Lori Wimbush, for leading those efforts, as well as our instructional supervisors for creating the packets, and our print shop technician, Michael Doherty, for going above and beyond to ensure the packets were printed in time. I also want to thank our school leaders, our principals, teachers, and staff for working together to distribute the materials to our students. In RCPS, we believe in snow days, so we still believe in snow days, but we also must keep students learning on track. As you've heard by now, tomorrow will be a remote learning day. So thanks to our efforts to ensure all students have access to offline assignments, and we are looking forward to welcoming our students and staff back to school soon. So to begin our report this evening, I will ask our Director of Community Engagement, Corey Alder, to provide an update on community engagement efforts and our Community Empowerment Center. Mr. Alder?
Good evening, Dr. White, Madam Chair Appel, Vice Chair Mr. Cherry. I am going to attempt to share a presentation on community engagement. All right, this community engagement update provides the school board with an overview of our efforts so far this school year, including the launch of programming and supports at the Community Empowerment Center, as well as a look ahead at the remainder of the school year. Our community engagement work is anchored in the strategic plan and is tied to each of the other pathways, with strong student outcomes as our ultimate focus. Let's take a look at some of the ways we collaborate and engage with partners, families, and staff on behalf of our students. Some examples are the Community Empowerment Center at Booker T. Washington, which we'll talk a little bit more about in just a few minutes, and also the Lift Center at Fallon Park. These are key examples of partnership hubs doing great work with partners in the community on behalf of our students and families. Our Central Council PTA collaboration helps us elevate the voices of parents and guardians across all schools. Our Community Builders pilot program help students build a sense of belonging in their schools and in their community. And there are many other school-based partnerships, sponsorships, and volunteer opportunities at each of our neighborhoods and each of our schools that we really celebrate, and we really are so thankful for those who get involved in our schools. So if you would like to get involved, please contact us or contact your school principal. Now let's look at the Community Empowerment Center a little bit closer here. With tremendous help from the school board, division leaders, and the community, we opened our innovative Community Empowerment Center in July and have experienced a successful first 6 months in operation. We believe that when families succeed, students succeed. And the word is certainly getting out that our center is a hub of support. With over 1,200 visits so far, we're confident that we're on the right track. Also, within the first 6 months, we've welcomed visitors representing all of our schools and programs. It may be kind of difficult to see all the names on there, but they're all there, I assure you. Some places have been represented greater than others, and we'll continue to get the word out and go out into the community and try to bring folks into the center as well. So why are folks visiting the Community Empowerment Center? So common reasons are enrollment support, resources and basic needs supplies, screenings for things like preschool, English language development, adult classes and workshops, and just general navigation questions and support and connection with various departments in the school division. And here are some examples of resources and supports we provided. Dozens of backpacks, food items, clothing, personal care items, services and supports with our CPS departments and partner organizations, including Virginia Department of Health, Junior Achievement, New Horizons, Region 5 Adult Education, Blue Ridge Literacy, and many others, including our very own Human Resources team with Walk Up Wednesday recruitment for our own in-house vacancies. The Community Empowerment Center has also been a community hub for our central PTA, our Education Foundation Board, Roanoke neighborhood groups, RACAC, the United Way, and others who have found this space to be welcoming and a great collaborative hub for them to meet their goals as well. And I'll say that we have a great team and great community partners making all of this possible, and we do learn from each experience growing as we move forward. And something that kind of helped us along to make all of this possible, even though our Community Empowerment Center was already in operation, we were also able to have the opportunity to apply for and receive funding through the Virginia Community Schools Initiative with the purpose of reducing non-academic barriers to student success, including health service, mental health services, and basic needs supplies, all of which were completely aligned with what we have at our Community Empowerment Center and our Lift Center at Fallon Park. Additionally, we were notified last week that both locations, the Community Empowerment Center and the Lift Center at Fallon Park, are officially designated as community schools or community hubs by the Virginia Department of Education. That's great news. Examples of how we'll be able to use the funding include a vehicle that helps us reduce transportation barriers. It's a van that helps us with engagement out in the community and helps bring families to our Community Empowerment Center. We'll also be able to support some of those basic needs supplies, other health and mental health services, financial literacy summits, literacy academy, and more programs that are directly aligned with all of those various parts and pathways of our strategic plan. So we've been busy and good things are happening, but we know we want to look ahead at what's coming up in the near future throughout the remainder of this school year. So we have preschool and kindergarten outreach. One example of this is we'll be at the Envision Center on February 4th. We're continuing to grow our PTA membership supporting school-based efforts. We collaborate with the board of our education foundation to increase membership and get more community involvement. And we're wrapping up our 2-year Community Builders pilot program and are advocating for additional funding to continue that program. So that was a mouthful, but I'll pause there. Thank you, Dr. White. I'll stick around to answer any questions anyone has, but thank you for allowing me to provide this brief update.
Thank you, Mr. Alder. Does the board have any comments or questions for Mr. Alder? And since I can't see everyone at once, please just go ahead and speak up.
Just wanted to say, awesome presentation. I'm excited about the progress that we've made with over 1,000 visits and haven't been open, I don't believe, a full year yet. So really excited to see how we're becoming an anchor for our communities. So I just want to say thank you for the work that you're doing. And I always look forward to these community engagement updates. I look forward to the work that you do because we are a part of a thriving community. So I just want to tell you thank you, Mr. Alder and your staff, and continue doing the great work that you've been doing.
Thank you.
Yes, likewise. I just want to say thank you. That is amazing. In 6 months, 1,200 families. I mean, it just speaks volumes of the need that is out in our community, and we are able to actually meet the need, and that is amazing. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alder.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Alder. And again, thank you for your leadership when it comes to community engagement and especially with the Community Empowerment Center. A lot of these efforts that Mr. Alder talked about is a result of his direct leadership and the support of our staff. So thank you so much. Next, I'll ask Dr. Jonathan Schultz, our Executive Director of Accountability and Strategic Initiatives, and Melissa Eckert, the Assistant Director of Accountability, to provide the results of the 2024-2025 school performance and support framework. I know that this is a little bit out of order, but I know that we're going to spend a considerable amount of time on both of these topics, but particularly the budget. So I'd like to move it around a little bit and ask Dr. Schultz to start. Madam Chair, if that's okay with you.
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. Dr. Schultz and Ms. Eckert.
Thank you. I should be sharing my screen, and actually, Dr. Williams is actually going to start us off here.
Okay. Dr. Williams, over to you.
Okay. Good evening, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, school board members, and all those watching, and Dr. White. In December, we brought to the board the School Performance and Support Framework results. It was just released by DOE, so we had a brief moment in time to look at the data that we wanted to provide for you. Tonight, we want to provide a follow-up, and Dr. Schultz and Ms. Eckert from our OASIS team are going to provide some highlights, patterns, and trends and celebrations to share with the board. After that, Mr. Freeman and I would like to share some local supports that we're providing for our school teams. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Schultz.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. So as you recall, when we have been coming to you over the last year and a half to talk about the School Performance and Support Framework, or the SPSF, one of the concerns that we have shared all along was the fact that the labels that the schools are assigned in the new system don't really capture the whole story or share the work that's the good work that's going on and the success that our students are having. So what we wanted to do is, now that we had a little more time to dig in, was to make sure that we shared and highlighted some of the wins that we have found in the background of the results. So if you recall, we had shared with you that one of the pieces to this new system for the state is to separate the accreditation results from the accountability results, with accreditation being meeting all the requirements related to the Code of Virginia. As we shared with you back in December, all of our schools are fully accredited, which we are very proud of. But we did want to highlight that that is an improvement over the previous year as well. not something just to be taken for granted. That last year, while all of our schools were accredited, we did have 5 schools who were accredited with conditions. So that's one of the first ones that we want to share with you tonight. The second thing that we want to talk about is in the area of federal identification. If you recall, we took a pretty deep dive into federal identification at your fall retreat. And at that time, we emphasized the idea that federal identification is about monitoring student group performance as opposed to just the all students group. And we talked about the 3 different levels of federal identification: targeted support and improvement, otherwise known as TSI, which happens each year; additional targeted support and improvement, which is an every 3 years kind of thing for schools that stay in TSI for a prolonged period of time; and then CSI, which is the highest level of support, which is comprehensive support and improvement. We also spent some time talking about the text in the purple box in the corner, which is the fact that the state has chosen to set up the new system so that if you do have a federal identification, it lowers your SPSF performance category for that school. And we discussed the impact of that at length at previous meetings. So we did want to share a couple of key wins, one of which was that coming into last year, we had 3 schools who were in the higher levels of support, according to the state. Lincoln Terrace, Westside, and Lucy Addison were either comprehensive school improvement or additional targeted support and improvement. And each one of those schools made significant gains in improving their federal identification status for this year, with Lincoln Terrace and Westside both moving to the lowest level of support at TSI, and Lucy Addison moving from the highest level of support all the way to having no federal identification at all. So again, we want to make sure that we take time to celebrate the work that's happening in those schools and clearly indicating that they're heading in the right direction. In addition, we want to take a look at the federal identification status for all of our schools. This slide is a little busy, but there's a lot of good information on it. So if you'll just bear with me as I walk through it. The white columns on the left side of the chart are showing you the federal identification status of all of our schools for the previous year. And the blue columns are showing the federal identification for our schools for this year based on last year's scores. So the key takeaways here that we want to point out are that we had 8 schools that improved their status, with many of those schools no longer being identified. And that while we do have schools who remain identified for needing to provide additional support to specific groups of students, the number of groups of students that we are focusing on or are being required to focus on is definitely lower. So the simplest way to think about the chart is that on the left-hand side, there are more than twice as many dots as there are on the right-hand side. So this represents, again, our school improvement teams making great progress, all the way from our mentors to Kevin Bowman to Dr. Wimbush and Mr. Freeman. This entire section of our team being able to just really help our schools make progress in the direction that we want them to. As an example, if you can find John Fishwick there in the middle and look across, you can see that last year they were identified for targeted support and improvement for 4 different groups of students: students with disabilities, Black students, multi-race students, and white students. And you can see that this year they are not identified for any of those groups and are not identified as TSI. So again, federal identification is it's a bit of a double-edged sword. It helps us, gives us additional resources, and helps us make sure that we can support groups of students that we know need additional support. Still not thrilled with the issue of it adjusting the SPSF framework score, but we just definitely want to take a moment to celebrate that our schools are heading in the right direction from a federal identification standpoint. And then the next thing that we want to talk about is our population of English learners. So as you know, and as we've talked about many times, our English learner population has continued to grow. It is a significant part and an important part of our division. We're now up to approximately 18% of our population. All of our student enrollment are English learners. You can see this graph shows the 10-year trend, where we basically have, over the last 10 years, we've essentially grown to about 2.5 times the number of English learners that we had had back in 2015. The reason, this is obviously a very important group of students to us, but one of the reasons that we wanted to make sure that we celebrate the wins that we can find in the that we are seeing inside the SPSF results is that when we shared our graduation rate with you back in September, we know that our English learners are one of the groups that we really want to focus on. If you go through and look at the graduation rates for all of our, for many of our student groups, when you look at our Black students, or white students, or students with disabilities, or multi-race students, those are all trending up and trending in the right direction. And when you're looking at achievement gaps, we have done a great job of narrowing that achievement gap, especially the white and Black student gap. Again, our students with disabilities with that over 90%, 91% as our graduation rate. So we know that our English learners are really a key focus area for us. So in a second, I'm going to turn it over to Melissa Eckert, who is our Assistant Director for Accountability and Strategic Initiatives. And she's going to share some key wins that our English learner students experienced this year. In particular, just making it clear that we're having a lot of success with those students. They are coming to school. They are demonstrating growth, and they are demonstrating mastery in many key ways. So I will turn it over now to Ms. Eckert.
Thank you, Dr. Schultz. So now I'll share some of the highlights for our English learners. So first, our EL students had the lowest chronic absenteeism rates compared to other student groups at 9 of our schools, and those are in dark green in this chart. They also had lower chronic absenteeism than the all students rate at another 8 schools, and those are in the lighter green here.
Trying to advance, and it's not letting me. 1 second. There we go. Sorry.
They also had success in growth, but first I want to share a few reminders. Growth measures how a student performed this year compared to previous years, and it also compares their progress against other students. So also, a school must have at least 15 EL students with growth data in order to get results for that group. And we had 13 elementary and middle schools with large enough EL populations for the growth measure, and those are listed in the chart here. Out of these 13 schools, we had 4 schools where our English learners had the highest reading growth, and those are the schools in dark green. And 2 of those schools, our EL students were earning over 80% of the reading growth points. They also had the highest math growth at 7 of those 13 schools. So once again, you can see them highlighted in dark green here. And you can see that we had 5 schools where our EL students were earning over 80% of the math growth points. For mastery, we had Fallon Park earn the highest EL progress score in the division at about 68%. And that put them in the top 15% of all schools in the state for that indicator. And at both high schools, our English learners had the highest math mastery compared to other student groups, with Patrick Henry's EL students earning about 96% of those points, and William Fleming's EL students earning almost all of the math mastery points. So we had a lot to celebrate across the division for our English learners. We also had several school level wins that we wanted to share, and we're just sharing a few here. So Wasena increased their framework score by over 12 points compared to last year, which is a huge jump. And they also earned a distinguished rating. Addison increased their overall score as well, and they exited CSI so that they are no longer federally identified, as Dr. Schultz mentioned. And Fleming increased their overall score by about 6 points compared to last year, which is another big jump. So these are great successes, and we wanted to share them because, as you know, and as you can see, The performance labels really don't tell the full story of how our schools are doing.
Thank you, Melissa. So we can share with you that we're not the only ones that think there are issues with the labels in the SPSF system. So the JLARC, which is the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Commission, that is a body related to the General Assembly. Whenever our state government wants a report or an evaluation of programs or different things that have been affected by the General Assembly, JLARC issues those reports. They were tasked with evaluating the new SPSF, and they released that report on December 16th, just after the results were made public, and we came to you at the board meeting in December. And when you have access to this PowerPoint, you can follow the link and read the full report. There's some they did an excellent analysis of the new system. But in terms of the labels, they had some specific things to say about the labels, including that they don't clearly communicate performance, nor do they clearly relate to each other as part of a continuous scale, and that the terms off track and on track imply a trajectory, either declining or increasing respectively, which is not what the labels were intended to do and does not accurately characterize at least some of the schools those labels. So they had a pretty blunt recommendation to the VBOE, which is fix it. Come up with new performance labels that more clearly convey performance and are part of a continuous scale. So we're excited to see what changes may be coming related to the distinguished on-track, off-track needs intensive support labeling system. Now I'll pass it over to Dr. Williams and Mr. Freeman, who will share some more information about supports we're providing to schools.
So we wanted to highlight some of our initiatives across the division. If you remember last year, we brought information about Project GLAD, and GLAD stands for Guided Language Acquisition Design. It really focuses on research-based instructional strategies to help our Ls and also all of our learners. So we had a pilot project that we started last year at Monterey, Preston Park, and Round Hill that we're seeing success with. And if you look to the left at one of our rock star teachers, you can see our anchor charts in the background, the graphic organizer that was co-created with students. And it's really about building background knowledge in text-rich learning environments and having visuals and things that are good for all students. So we celebrate our GLAD classrooms, and we have teachers that visit from other schools to learn more about the instructional strategies in our GLAD classrooms. We also found out this year that we were awarded a comprehensive literacy grant to expand the program. So we're going to expand it to 3 of our middle schools, to Addison, Breckenridge, and Woodrow. And we'll keep you updated on that. Also, as you remember last year, because our EL population is increasing and we needed more support for level 1, 2, and 3 according to the SOQs, we hired 35.5 additional EL teachers to support our ELs this school year. So when they're co-teaching with our general ed teachers, we realized we need to help provide support to our new EL cohorts and build teaching teams, co-teaching teams at each school. So we're working on a cohort this spring to organize where our teams can meet at least once a month to share instructional strategies and build capacity across our division. In addition, we want to thank the board for providing high quality instructional materials. We came to you last spring, and you approved funding for our new K-5 core reading curriculum, Imagine Learning, and our new math curriculum, Math Space, for our middle school students. The implementation is always challenging, but there's so many celebrations. Our teachers have embraced it, and I just want to give a shout out to them because it's hard to take new curriculum, to plan it, to implement it, and to learn all the new modules. And they've done a wonderful job. And also our instructional supports and our principals have just really embraced the new curriculum and moving forward. And just another celebration to share. We had the representatives from the company. They come in and they visited 6 schools last week, approximately 16 classrooms, to sort of take a snapshot to see how the implementation is going. and they were so complimentary. They just praised our teachers and the work that they're doing and the implementation. So we just want to acknowledge that it is hard when we take on new curriculum, especially aligned to new standards, but we're moving forward together. Along with instructional materials, we want to emphasize our laser-like focus on early literacy professional learning. Currently, we have a comprehensive professional learning program through Letters 1, Letters 2, our EL Letters, and our preschool Letters cohort. It all focuses on the science of reading because we want to build the capacity of all of our teachers and to serve our students. In addition, we have really great reading just-in-time PD this year. We recognize through our learning walks that we have lots of new teachers. We also have teachers that have moved grade levels and teachers that are teaching reading for the first time. And so we reached out to the company and we said, can you provide us some just-in-time relevant PD? And they were able to provide that in the fall. Our principals did a great job providing coverage so that our teachers could participate during the school day with grade level teams. And so we look for opportunities to meet our teachers and our school teams where they are and to listen to them to provide professional learning that's relevant. Hurt, Park, Fallon, Lincoln, and Westside will continue support with the Virginia Literacy Improvement Network that focuses on high quality Tier 1 reading instruction and also intervention. Overall, I just want to say that we have the motto of all hands on deck. We want to work side by side with our schools, teams. We go on lots of learning walks every week, and we differentiate our learning walks based on school needs. We let the data show us what we need to do. And for instance, at one school, we may go on literacy learning walks and look at primary literacy instruction. At another school, we might focus on math. At our high schools, we focused on student engagement. So we really try to differentiate our support and listen to what our staff needs. What's really important at the end of our learning walks is we take time to debrief. We talk about the celebrations, what we're seeing, the bright spots, and then also action items. How are we going to follow up and what are the areas we need to grow? And in these discussions, one of the huge benefits is that we try to connect the dots across the division so that we can help each other. If one school has a strength in one area, then we connect it with another school team in another area so we can learn from each other. In addition, this year, we have a laser-like focus on being present at school meetings, sitting side by side at instructional leadership meetings, at literacy PLCs, at weekly PLCs, at department meetings, so that we can listen and support our school leaders. We've also implemented quarterly joint work sessions. This is a time each quarter where our reading specialists, our instructional coaches, and targeted school improvement mentors come together. We evaluate the data and we talk about steps forward, and we build PD together based on our needs. So there's so many things to celebrate and the great work, and you're seeing it through the student achievement. We aren't where we want to be right now, but we are moving forward, and we want to celebrate the great work of our team. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Freeman to talk about additional targeted supports.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Good evening to the board and to Dr. White. As Dr. Williams has already stated, this school year, based on the projections the OASIS team gave to us last school year, we moved forward with modifying how the learning walks were going to take place this year. Based on the preliminary data, we increased the learning walks for certain schools in order to have that all hands on deck approach and to be present with a division contact lead. We received the data, and based on the preliminary scores, we increased not only their learning walks, but being strategic, as already stated, in our walkthroughs, but also our walkthrough tool, and then more intentional in our debriefings to even be so in a data dive. And in that data dive, not only did we address those celebrations, we also addressed those things that need to be corrected and put things in place right then to have that measures corrected so we can have effective instruction in the classroom. We were able to use the information discussed to use during our ILT and PLC meetings, as already stated by Dr. Williams. Those meetings take place weekly in our schools. And when that information is utilized during our conversations, we've had individuals from the school improvement office, also individuals such as our assistant superintendent, Dr. Wimbush, and Mr. Kevin Bowman also attending these PLC and IoT meetings in order to look at our CSSPs. As we remember, our CSSPs is our comprehensive school support plans, which you're going to find out that that's going to be changed into our multi-year school support plans, which is going to be called MSSP. So yes, we have some new acronyms we're going to be learning again this school year in place of the old acronym, where we're going to be looking at those plans and make sure not only our division level plans and the supports that we have put in place are documented and followed through, but also the things that are discussed in our PLC and IoT meetings according to our instructional enhancements. So as you look at the next slide, you're going to be looking at what we call the evidence-based interventions that we have to put in our MSSPs in order for us to qualify for an application workbook to receive additional funds for schools that are targeted as TSI and CSI. So we're going to be working strategically with them in the next few weeks, and I'm preparing you for the board meeting on February the 10th, where we'll be asking Dr. White to sign off on our MSSPs for us to receive additional fundings from the state regarding TSI and CSI schools. But as you look at this, you will see that the evidence-based interventions are in place. There's a focus, the measurement that we're using for the data points, and also the flexibility in our targeted groupings. So all this has been intentional, as you will see, why we have results in seeing schools come off the list, some that are on the list now having structures put in place. And I want to just take a moment to commend the principals because they've already been working strategically on a short time frame that we have received. So as we look at moving forward, and moving forward with next steps, you will see that I just want to update everybody on the timeline. As the information is released, it was released before winter break. We've been in communication with our state representative. We're excited because we do have consistency with Mr. Keith Klassen being our state representative again this school year, who has worked strategically with us and walked alongside us in collaboration to ensure our schools are doing what we say we're going to do. And also, the completions of the webinars took place on January the 15th, 2026. So when I say a short turnaround period, short turnaround period. These funds will continue to allow us to provide opportunities for students, but not only the opportunities for students to be successful in the classroom, but also some tutoring measures, but also professional development, things you've already heard that will take place outside of the teacher's contractual hours, but we'll be able to give them a little bit of a stipend. I must commend the principals and teachers for being specific in filling out the application and being good stewards and spending the money according to what has been submitted. And with this type timeline, there are a couple of new requirements this year, including that the school board will have access to the MSSPs, which you do have access to all of our MSSPs, and we're going to make them available so that way that Dr. White would have an opportunity to sign during the next board meeting. I do want to share that the principals have been very strategic in working with every department in central office to ensure they have the data, to not only have the data, but utilize the data. And such, they are making these additional remediations that allow us to make steps forward and use this as targeted support. And I want to commend them and commend the Office of School Improvement for doing so and working with us. As we always state, we want to make sure that as we go forward, that we know our students by need, name, and strength, but being able to address the need, name, and strength and provide needs as they need to be successful. We want to thank you, the board, for allowing us this opportunity to share this information with you on tonight. And if you have any questions, we would take them at this time.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions from the board? So I'll go Ms. Quintana or Ms. Trigg. Any questions or comments?
No questions. Great job. Excellent presentation. Love seeing those schools coming out of those areas. I know I usually talk to all the principals when I go to some of the middle school basketball games, and just some of the work that they're doing is just amazing. Even with Jackson, sometimes having Saturday school just for the kids to have somewhere to go and to help them with their reading and their math and so forth. So I just think it's amazing work across the board with our team, and definitely want to give the kudos to those school principals and the teachers that are working hard.
Thank you, Ms. Trigg.
And I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, yes, no, thank you. And it's amazing to see just how much we have achieved and how those, I guess, measuring parameters do not measure how we really are doing in the school. So thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you. Mr. Link, Dr. Jameson, any questions or comments from either of you?
I don't know if I have any questions. I wanted to thank you for putting the time into giving us a different look into the data and getting a chance to really highlight all of the good hard work that the staff has been doing. Thank you to each and every one of them as well.
Yeah, I would just add thanks for letting us know of the changes, because as we've talked about before, we're not completely in love or even totally understand some of the standards that we're being held up against. So it's good to have a multifaceted look at how we're doing. And also, as you've just so nicely emphasized, a big shout out to all of you teachers, everybody, admin, who's had a hand in this. This is a lot of change in an academic district in a short period of time. And so the success is to be highly celebrated, and we're very proud of all the work that you've done. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jameson. Ms. Watkins, our Vice Chair Cherry.
I'll just say that I echo everything my peers have said here. I don't need to beat that horse down, but they've said it all.
Thank you.
Yeah, wanted to take a little bit of privilege of being the youngest in the group. Yeah, no, awesome.
Come on.
No, this is honestly, I don't think we understand. I think Dr. Jameson just talked about our teachers, the heavy lifting that it takes to make these pivots that we've made. And the only phrase I can think of is when we learn how to make lemonade out of lemons. So we've done an incredible job with highlighting all the good work that we've done and that we are doing. So shout out to the principals, the staff, the teachers, the instructional assistants, all of you. It takes all of us. We are a village. So just want to say thank you all and continue to keep up the great work.
Thank you. And you can definitely see from the pictures and the reports the true commitment to high quality first year instruction across the entire division, and that support is all hands on deck. I did have a general question probably for Mr. Freeman regarding the typical timeline for those MSSPs, formerly CSPs. Is that timeline typically this short, or was it delayed because of the delay in the data that we got from the state? Because again, if those plans are, grant monies to provide extra support are dependent upon the plans being submitted, I just want to get an idea of, is this unusual this year because it was the first year, and how we can make sure to utilize those supports going forward.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for the question, Mrs. Apel. I would just share with you that yes, it was timely. It was different this year. That's why the short period of turnaround, I was a little I voiced my concern in regards to that, because they actually gave us an extension due to the fact that our board member meeting is not till February the 10th, because it's supposed to be February the 6th. And so we were not the only division that actually shared the concern. That's why they gave the extension. And it's because we received the information so late. And I'm glad you asked the question, because the funds that we do go and apply for must be utilized by September the 30th of this coming school year. So we only have a short period of time to, once the funds are allocated to us, to use them. And that's why I'm grateful for the team and the principals that have worked very much together strategically so we can provide what is right for our students. And I will say this, what works out well for our behalf is that at the beginning of the year, we ask all of our principals to create a CSSP. So it's easy for us to switch over to the multi-year school support plan and only have to make modifications because we start in the beginning of the school year. Dr. White and I have this conversation all the time. Why do we start a comprehensive school support plan, and even after we get the results in September, October, in November, December, when we're almost halfway through the school year? So we required everybody to do it during the summertime based on the preliminary data that we had received. So that way, all we have to do is make the minor adjustments, make it an application booklet, and keep moving forward.
Thank you for that information, and I appreciate again just sharing our level of organizational discipline from the top down and the dedication to true lifelong learning. We're not just teaching kids, we're also always looking to be better at the craft. So thank you for that. I think that's it from the board on this subject. Dr. White?
All right, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the board as well. It's really, I just want to say thank you to all of you for your continued support, again, of curriculum and instruction. What you've just heard, these results, again, the labels don't tell the whole story. So I'm just so proud of our teams, the curriculum instruction team under leadership, Dr. Williams and Mr. Freeman, but certainly our OASIS team, Dr. Schultz, Melissa Eckert, our principals. When we talk about our teachers actually getting it done, right? Our central office teams that go into support, it's intentionality. It is also organizational discipline that teachers need the curriculum in hand. They need those resources in hand. They need the support, professional learning, the budget, the staffing, all of those things that come together. That's how we're continuing to see growth. And so, and you know that this is a segue into the next topic, but I just want to say that this is not happenstance, that when we see growth in this way, it's because of intentionality. It's because of that level of focus and discipline, and it takes everybody support on all sides to support the classroom. So, and I want to thank the board, especially in terms of your governance and leadership to make to have this implementation happen in this way. So just thank you for that. And thank you, Dr. Schultz, Ms. Eckert, for your report tonight, and Dr. Williams and Mr. Freeman as well. Thank you for that. Appreciate you. All right, so on to the next topic. Again, last but certainly not least, we do have an update on the 2026-2027 budget development process. And before our Chief Financial Officer, Mrs. Kathleen Jackson, presents the budget update, I would like to provide some context as a reminder of how we got here. So Mrs. Apel shared earlier in her comments that last week the City Council voted to amend the school funding policy for, as we are tracking it for at least the third time in the last 3 budget cycles, with 2 of these changes coming just within this past year, this calendar year. This last year, the city provided the same funding as the year prior without any revenue increase, which already would have put us at a deficit for this year. The revised policy now provides RCPS with 34% of any increase or decrease in revenue growth using the flat funded 106.9 million from last year as a base. Now, over the past 6 years, we have accomplished so much because we've had fiscal support and we have budgeted wisely, keeping our students, our staff, and our community at the center of our decisions. Responsible stewardship has allowed us to directly respond to community needs by adding teaching positions, reducing class sizes in the core content areas, reducing the number of students identified as high risk for reading difficulties through direct support for reading instruction, increasing teacher pay by an average of 14%, and raising the minimum wage for our classified staff to recruit and retain, of course, the best employees. We want the best of the best for our children. We've doubled our CTE seat capacity through the Charles W. Day Technical Education Center, or DayTech as we call it, which benefits our students. Of course it does, but it also supports workforce development and our city and our region. Expanding community support by opening the Community Empowerment Center at Booker T. Washington, which you heard the results tonight, where we offer adult education courses, student enrollment assistance, family support programs, and coordination with community partners and community resources. Now, we could not have achieved these student-centered kind of projects if you will, without streamlining our central office, which additionally saved the division approximately $6,000 per month in lease costs. This move also cleared the way for the Community Empowerment Center, and cleared the way, honestly, also for day tech, right? Because we had staff at Ruffner, and so we were able to make sure that we're streamlining services in that way. So you've heard all about the Community Empowerment Center from Mr. Alder. These accomplishments, again, don't happen in a vacuum. When we say knowing our students by name, need, and strength, that is exactly what our teachers, our staff members, and our school leadership do every day, which I'm sure the board knows and is aware of and appreciates. They are working with our students, many of whom have growing academic, social, and emotional needs that are met because our staff as a whole pour into our students every single day, and we must continue to support them. Community members turn to our schools many times because schools are the hub of the community. So many times when people don't know where to turn or they don't know where to go, they know that they are welcomed and supported at schools. And so our schools continue to be our responsibility. We will continue to advocate for what our schools, our teachers, our principals need to make sure that we can make the magic happen, if you will, not only with construction, but in instruction as well. It is extremely disappointing and concerning that we now find ourselves in a time of these shifting kind of political priorities that reduce support for public education. Audit after audit demonstrates that RCPS has managed our funds responsibly. The situation that we face today is not the result of overspending or mismanagement, but of changing policies. And this is a presentation that I never wanted to make, and it will impact every aspect of the division from central office to schools. But make no mistake, we will do everything that we can to protect classrooms and to preserve jobs. So let's be clear about how we got here. RCPS has earned awards, again, for clean audits and budget transparency. Yet headlines like RCPS returns $20 million to the city are confusing. This did not happen because we over budgeted or had extra funds. Under the previous funding formula, RCPS received 40% of the city's projected tax revenue. At the end of the fiscal year, if actual revenue was higher than expected, RCPS received 40% of the difference through a true-up. If revenue had been lower than expected, we would have had to return 40% of the difference. So we like to think about it as going out kind of with a friend when you agree to split costs, but the final total isn't known until the end. So somebody says, I'll pay for dinner, somebody else says, I'll pay for the Uber, then you settle up kind of at the end. And that's what the true up is. It's a settling up. And so I just want not only the board, but the community to understand what that means. Because RCPS budgets carefully and we do not spend money that has not yet been received, those true-up dollars built our fund balance. Our savings account intended for emergencies, long-term needs, and reducing future debt. So, for example, in 2022, when our schools faced multiple threats and safety concerns, the school board was able to quickly approve 25 additional safety measures that had an immediate and positive impact on our schools, on our staff, and on our students, thanks to having the fund balance available for emergencies. And where we put in lots of those safety, all of the safety efforts and all 25 implemented all of those 25 recommendations. We also created a capital projects fund balance at the suggestion of City Council to reduce the amount of debt the division would need to take on for major facilities projects. This past year, the city informed us that we may no longer have an unassigned fund balance. At the city's request, the school board transferred $20.5 million to the city. This was a one-time transfer and is not the cause of our current budget shortfall. Even if those funds were available, using one-time savings to cover ongoing expenses would not address the underlying financial pressures. The shortfall we face is driven by rising ongoing costs and decreased funding. So this is a serious situation, and we cannot minimize the gravity of it. We are committed to transparency and also thoughtful planning and keeping our students at the center of every decision as we work through this challenge. So let's walk through where we are. And as the mayor said last week, this change is abrupt. There is no opportunity to slowly off-ramp. So you'll note the title of the presentation tonight, which is exactly what we're facing right now, and that is Confronting Constraints, Protecting the Classroom in a New Funding Reality. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mrs. Jackson as she goes through where we are right now and explain the funding development process moving forward. So Mrs. Jackson, I'll turn it over to you. He's coming.
Can you hear me?
There we go. Okay.
Sorry
Yes.
about that.
No
Let me
problem.
try that share again. Okay.
Yes.
There we go.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you for that, Dr. White, for that introduction and kind of setting the stage for where we are. And as I walk through this, I did want to stay at this point. I know it's a little bit awkward to have folks jump up and contribute during a Zoom meeting. I can't see everyone on the screen, but I do want to just offer that opportunity to my colleagues, and I'll try to do my best to kind of pause here and there. So certainly Dr. White and anyone else on core team or Donna Caldwell, who's helped so much today and being prepared for this presentation, please feel free to jump in, and I'll try to do my best to be slow, but maybe Dr. White just flag me down if someone is trying to jump in with some information, because I do want to make sure that I don't leave anything out. But so with that, we will jump in, and I'm going to start off with kind of the situation where we are. Jump right into revenue. We talked about this last meeting. So for the most part, there is not new information here. State funding and city funding are the same as we knew 2 weeks ago. The one adjustment that we have made since is we reevaluated our estimate of other funding, which the bulk of that was interest income. So that ties directly into what Dr. White was just talking about. We had, money in the bank, savings for needs and allowing us to move forward with things that might come up mid-year, that kind of thing, for security and rainy day, sometimes people call it, that we earn interest on that money, or did. So that was a significant contributor to our budget. So that money is now back in the city coffers, so we can't count on that interest income. So that's the adjustment that you see here. And so the net total of the information we have at present is only just over $1 million increase year over year in revenue. So a pretty small change. So what are some of the expense differences that we're looking at? So of course, the biggest one that we want to consider is the impact of pay raises. The state budget that came out in December does include state funds for the state share of a 2% raise for standards of quality positions. So the numbers that I'm sharing with you today do have the cost of a 2% raise included. So you can see here, just under $3 million additional cost to our general operating fund with grants, gets up to about $3.4 million. An important consideration, though, is that even doing no raise does come with a cost. because we would be leaving state money on the table. So you can see there that $1.6 million of the revenue we're anticipating from the state has to be used for a raise. And you don't qualify for it if you don't give at least a 2%, an average 2% raise. So that's the issue that we have to consider. It would certainly cost less, but we'd be leaving state money on the table. So at this moment, so there's a lot to discuss, but I just want to make that clear that at this point, we have gone ahead and included the cost of moving forward with a 2% raise so that we could at least take advantage of that state funding. But as you can see, the state funding barely covers half of the actual cost because, of course, the state standards of quality don't come close to actually funding the positions that are needed to provide quality education in Virginia. So on the benefit side, we have some increases, some decreases. So for the most part, pretty good news on this side, actually. Every biennium, the Virginia Retirement System updates their numbers and they recommend a rate for the Virginia Retirement System or VRS plans, and that's actually gone down a bit compared to the last biennium. So that's favorable. So you can see here that we would be required to pay in 12.2% for employees on plans 1 or 2. For hybrid plan, it's a combination, so we would pay in 12.2% to the defined benefit or pension portion of their plan, and then we would, on top of that, have to contribute between 1 and 3.5% of a match to the employee's defined contribution plan. So as you can see, that's shifted over the years. I think last year we were right at close to 50-50. So as you can see, the majority of our employees at this point are on that hybrid plan. So looking at the elections, the voluntary contributions of employees so that we could assess, what that match requirement would be, brought us to our average of 12.84%, which we're using for budgeting purposes. That's down from 15% last year. So that's where we can fortunately see a lot, in addition to the retiree health insurance credit and state group life that VRS also handles, slight decreases there. All in that we're projecting to be about a almost $9 million cost reduction. So that's a positive. Health insurance is up. We're projecting that to be about 1.25 million. That's estimating based on a 10% rate increase beginning in January of next year. That's a lot. I know that's a big increase, but that's actually a smaller increase than it would have been had we not made the plan adjustments that we made this year. So we are benefiting from that adjustment going forward, trying to keep that increase. Well, I was going to say manageable. It's not manageable, but it's certainly better than it would have been. So with those kind of key personnel related costs in mind, this is just a sort of a very high level summary of where we are, and we'll get into a little bit more about that in a few slides. But this gives you a comparison of revenue and expenditures and what the variance there is. So as you can see, in the current year adopted budget, we approved a budget that intends to use $10.3 million out of fund balance, out of savings. So we were allowed to do that one last time to bridge the gap when the city council voted to flat fund us and not give us an increase in revenue in May of this past year for the current year. So we were allowed to use those funds, but again, those funds are gone. And even if we did have them, as Dr. White said, that's not a prudent way to budget. That would just be, exacerbating the problem if we were relying on savings to try to make up that much of a deficit. So as you can see, that use of fund balance, that's gone. So if we're starting with the base of where we are in the current year, we've got to find that $10.3 million before we do any of the additional. So that's how we come up with that $16.5 million variance that we are facing. So to try to kind of think through those numbers, and Dr. White did a good job of explaining that earlier, but this visual might help further. that we've heard some numbers in the news of that fund balance amount that we were required to return to the city, the $20.5 million. And that was, as Dr. White described, funds that we saved over time. We were able to use federal pandemic relief funding to help cover costs. That allowed us to reserve funds, kind of knowing everyone talked about the fiscal cliff when all of that ESSER pandemic relief funding would go away. That's where we are right now, and unfortunately don't have those savings available anymore. Emergencies, as Dr. White gave the great example of those safety measures that we were able to do. So, for individuals, the way you might think about that is, we're all encouraged to plan for a rainy day. Maybe you might decide to squirrel away 3 months of what your rent costs, just in case. Well, if somebody unfortunately is laid off, you've got that money. That's going to pay your rent, but only for those 3 months. Then that money is gone and you have a problem. So that's kind of what we're facing here. We had those funds available for, and we're using some of that in that very real scenario in the current year, but that can't continue. Versus the budgetary deficit that we're facing this year is really an ongoing challenge. It has nothing to do, aside from the sort of the interest income portion of revenue income that of course has gone down. This is really us having to face the revenue projections, the ever increasing expenditures of doing business, and how do we meet that in the middle? That unfortunately revenue is not keeping up with the expenditures. So I hope that visual is helpful in kind of helping understand the difference of those two buckets. And then just kind of to summarize before we move on to the next portion of the information, just again, very high level, some of the increases and decreases of costs that we are looking at. We talked about that 2% raise is currently included, a bit of an increase in health and dental insurance costs anticipated. We do have some positions that currently are partially grant funded, where the grants are ending to some extent. All in tutoring, that's something that in general we're probably going to have to make some tough decisions about things that are grant funded. But in the case of reading specialists, that's an SOQ requirement. So that's something we have to be careful about, making sure we're meeting those requirements there. We do have some non-personnel expenditures, some textbook needs that we have in the budget currently. And then there's a fair amount related to special education and CEIS requirements that are going to be new this coming year, some additional costs, and making sure that we're appropriately budgeting, particularly for students with intensive support needs there. Again, a little bit of savings on the good savings on the VRS rate reduction. We've got our projection for what we will owe on existing debt service is down a little bit, about $500,000. So that's favorable. And then as we noted, at this moment, we're projecting just about a $1 million increase in revenue. So all of that nets to, you see there, that anticipated increase of 6.23 million added on top of the 10.3 we already have in the current year gets us to that 16.5. So let me pause there before we go on in case any of my colleagues want to contribute or if there are any questions. Okay. All right. So how are we going to handle a $16.5 million deficit? So we're going to have to make some tough decisions and really scrutinize everything across the board, as Dr. White said. So we are going to, in the next few minutes, share some of those programs and functions that we've been looking at, and wanted to start with kind of what criteria did we use? How did these things arrive on this presentation today, if you will? How did we try to make sure, because we have a lot of feelings in all of this, and it's very hard to talk about. So we really needed to have some clear criteria to use in looking at this.
And Mrs. Jackson, I'll just jump in here also just to say that as a reminder to the board that which I'm sure you remember that we do break these meetings into two, where we talk about personnel considerations at one meeting, and then we talk about non-personnel at another meeting. So tonight is primarily about non-personnel. We will get to personnel considerations at your next meeting. And that's typically how we do it, again, because it's a lot of information. So we kind of want to take these one at a time. But Mrs. Jackson is exactly right. We had to have an objective way of looking at every kind of program. And again, this is the change in policy just happened last week, just on Tuesday. So we really had to come together to consider how can we objectively look at the programs and what's the criteria to measure those programs and services against to see if they should be on the table for consideration. And so this is the criteria that we're using. So Mrs. Jackson, I'm sorry, back to you.
No, thank you. Okay, so one thing we're considering is, does the program or service require specialty transportation routes that add costs? So that's something that I know we've had a lot of conversation about, the ever increasing costs there and needs. So that was a consideration that we looked at. Do the programs or services go above or beyond what is required by the standards of quality? As we just discussed and know, the standards of quality, we do not feel adequately support what we would consider quality education, but under these circumstances, that's sort of the minimum we have to make sure we're at least meeting the standards of quality. Are additional personnel required to provide whatever the program or service might be? And finally, can the programs or services be retained through a different service model? Is there a way we could kind of keep it going, but just maybe at a less costly method? So I'm going to jump right into some of the items that are on the table for consideration. First is activity buses. We had conversation when our budget was flat funded last year about the possibility of doing away with activity buses, and left them in for this year, but that's got to come back as a point of consideration. So we currently provide late bus transportation home from after school activities at all middle and high schools. As you can see here, there's quite a few trips for each of our schools. So obviously that is specialty transportation route. That's additional routes above and beyond just getting kids to and from school. It does require additional personnel to make that happen, and is not something that's required by the standards of quality. That is not something that we could provide elsewhere. That is something that would be a discontinuation of that service, and we would have to look to parents to provide or coordinate transportation home from those supplemental after school activities. But that would, we estimate that would reduce our budget by about $350,000. The next item under consideration is our Gifted and Talented Pullout Program for elementary students, known as Play-Doh. That is a program that all students from all schools who qualify go to either Highland Park or Fairview Elementary School. There are 9 total classrooms currently across those 2 elementary schools for all of those students. So of course that does require specialty transportation routes to bring students across the city to those 2 elementary schools. Additional personnel are required to staff those classrooms. So it does go beyond the standards of quality for gifted education. And there we do feel like we could retain services through a different service model. We do have gifted resource teachers in all of our elementary schools. So we do already offer gifted services to all elementary schools in all schools. It would just be a very different model than this pullout focused situation that we have currently. So our preliminary budget impact is a savings of about $160,000 there. It does tie on the transportation to the next slide that I'll go into. So supplemental transportation services is another area we're looking at. Particularly since the pandemic, this has grown quite a bit in terms of the need for individualized sort of point-to-point transportation services. It's extremely costly. So in this scenario, we use contract vendors to provide transportation to students from home to school or what have you, as the need requires. So we would be looking to reduce that use because, of course, it does require specialty transportation routes and additional personnel to coordinate and offer. It is not required by the standards of quality, and we do believe we could retain those services through a different model, in part through the broader reduction of some specialty programming, like we just talked about, the potential of the gifted pullout program would allow us to utilize the bus routes that we already have to more effectively serve the students and cut down on that need for the extra transportation services above and beyond the school bus transportation we already provide. And so our estimate is that that reduction would save about $650,000 from the budget. The next program for consideration is the Virginia Preschool Initiative 3-year-old program. We currently offer 9 3-year-old classrooms. They can serve up to 16 students each. Now, I will say some of these classrooms do serve students with disabilities as well. We would certainly continue that service. That is something that's required by students' IEPs. So we would not be completely doing away with 3-year-old services, but the portion that is funded through the Virginia Preschool Initiative is chiefly what we are talking about that could be reduced. So likely would reduce that number of classrooms by 5 or 6. And so that's something that definitely requires specialty transportation routes for moving those preschool students to their preschool centers. Additional personnel is required, a teacher and an aide in each classroom. And it is not something that's required by the standards of quality. So what we're looking at currently is that the VPI 3-year-old services would end or at least be reduced. We would retain those 3-year-old rooms that serve students with disabilities, and the 4-year-old VPI program would be unchanged. We're not talking about making any changes there. The Community Empowerment Center. We just heard wonderful report of how great that center is, but it does require some additional personnel. It doesn't require any transportation per se, but it is not something that's required by the standards of quality. And to some extent, we were already providing those services, though certainly not to the wonderful level that they are able to be provided through the Community Empowerment Center. But because it is sort of above and beyond the standards of quality in particular, we felt like we had to consider it as it is an additional cost, and services would likely revert to a sort of a decentralized format that was previously in place. So our preliminary budget impact there is about $300,000. That number could change just depending on what that would look like and the sort of maintenance costs of that facility, but that's our preliminary estimate there. Modular classrooms. Now, the City Council did approve just over $4 million to fund implementing the trailers. So this item won't really affect the budget in the coming year, because that $4 million would pay to implement and build and outfit and get those modular classrooms up and ready to be used in the 26-27 school year. The concern is then they would have to be maintained. So we would have ongoing lease costs of about $1.8 to $2 million each year, and then some additional staffing. So our estimate is this could add in future years $3 to $3.5 million to the annual operating budget. And so that's just in this time of this new fiscal reality, that is a concern of whether we should move forward with something that we know is going to add such a significant cost to the budget. So certainly additional personnel would be required, and those additional costs, as we mentioned, services can be retained somewhat as they are right now through a different service model. That different service model is large class sizes, as we know. So certainly not ideal, but we would certainly continue to provide the education as we are now, just in the undesirable circumstance of overcrowding. So this item has sort of several items that kind of all sort of fall into reducing or deferring expenses that are under consideration. Deferring maintenance on facilities, it's something we talked about when our budget was lowered last year, and that's something that's going to have to come back for consideration. Again, we're not talking about doing away with maintaining facilities, of course, but just reducing that budget, which would mean we'd have to sort of triage work orders and make some tough decisions about what absolutely we can afford to fix or change, and what is going to have to wait. Those kinds of things would be the case with that reduction. We do have some savings that our technology team has identified that add up to about $800,000. Now, some of that is deferring expenses. So, for example, we have been in leases for student and staff laptops and tablets, or chiefly laptops, though. And so we could move to purchasing those. So that would be a one-time cost that would not continue for a few years. The problem there is that, 3-4 years, when they've gotten to the end of their useful life, we would have an expense again. So that's just something to keep in mind, but it would buy us a little bit of time if we move forward with some of those cost-saving measures. We're looking at significantly reducing conference and professional learning travel. We estimate a savings of about $300,000 there. That's not completely wiping it out because some of our professional learning is funded through grants, or we do have times when people are presenting and leading sessions and that kind of thing. So we certainly recognize that it's not realistic to completely wipe that out, but definitely would be looking at putting more stringent parameters in place for what we could actually afford to send folks to in that area. And we're looking at eliminating the language essentials for teachers of reading and spelling, which we refer to most often as letters training. That's something that it is. Oops, sorry, hold on. Didn't mean to do that. It is a wonderful training, but it costs about $190,000. There are training modules available at no cost from Virginia Department of Education. They are not as good, so that's why we went with letters to begin with. But under the circumstances, that is something that we are considering, because that there is a resource. It's just not ideal, but there is something.
It's the
We're
training
looking
that
at
supports that's the training that supports the science of reading that Dr. Williams mentioned earlier. So just to circle back to that.
Thank you.
Sure.
We're looking at NWEA, the Northwest Evaluation Association, Measures of Academic Progress, or the MAP test that we've talked about. That's an assessment that we've used quite a bit over the last few years to make sure that we know where students are and that we are helping them grow and achieve success. But that's an $80,000 cost. So that's something that we are looking at. There's a different way that we could make that happen. And then the last item under this group is a reduction to equipment and supply costs for athletics. We could save about $200,000 there, is what we've looked at. So actually, before I go on to that, I'm going to turn it back to Dr. White, but before we go on, I just did want to say, so that this is not a complete list. this is not a done deal. But this is where we are in, trying to do the best we can to really look across the division at ways that we can try to save dollars in an impactful way and ideally to minimize the impact on staff. But Dr. White will go into that. But nothing is off the table. If you don't hear something, if I didn't mention something just now, that doesn't mean it's not something that might be discussed at a future meeting, and we're certainly open to recommendations. But this is the first look at kind of ways that we have been working on how we could address this shortfall. So, Dr. White?
Sure, thank you. And thank you, Mrs. Jackson. So ultimately, everything that we've put on the table so far, as Mrs. Jackson said, these are preliminary, but everything that we put on the table so far only adds up to about $4 million in terms of the fiscal impact. And so some of that directly or indirectly impacts personnel. So this is, as we've talked about before, this is a people business. This is a human business, and we need people for our young people. So about 75% of our budget is in personnel. And so we support, it's always important for us to remember, we support the city and the region's economy as the second largest employer in the city. So some people might say, well, just cut what you need from central office or administration. But our administrative staff only make up about 4% of the personnel budget. So even if we cut it all, we would not come close to making up that type of deficit. So the bottom line is that staffing at all levels will be impacted. So we will be pausing hiring and evaluating whether we fill vacancies on a case-by-case basis. We've already begun to adjust duties as vacancies come to light to reduce costs and to attempt to minimize the impact. We are evaluating SOQ required staffing levels and may have more areas that have to be reduced to that level. Keep in mind that we are well aware that the SOQs are woefully inadequate to truly maintain quality, particularly in an urban school division, but everything has to be on the table in this unfortunate situation. So while these are hard conversations to have, we will continue to keep our students at the center of every decision, as we've talked about before, and to do everything in our power to protect the classroom and to preserve jobs, quite frankly. So we met with our central office leaders and principals this afternoon to provide a summary of this information, and we will be hosting a virtual budget town hall meeting next Thursday, February 5th from 6 to 7 p.m. Via Microsoft Teams, so our entire community can come together to learn more about the context presented tonight, so that they can also, the community can provide feedback and recommendations, and so that we can talk about next steps. So we do encourage our students, our families, our staff, our community members to submit questions ahead of time. We will be taking questions live, but if you can submit questions ahead of time, that would be great as well. It'll be on our website, rcps.info/provide your input to join us for the discussion. And then we will also we'll bring at the board meeting, of course, we'll have our public hearing for the budget on February 10th. So with that, Madam Chair, we'll take any questions that you have at this time.
Thank you very much. And so first I'll go ahead and see if Mr. Link has any questions. We'll go on down the line with regards to school board members. So Mr. Link.
Dr. White, I was doing some math while Ms. Jackson was giving some of the considerations we're looking at. What she's listed from activity buses to athletics adds up to $7 million. The modulars, if I take those out at $3 million, I get the 4 million number that you just mentioned a second ago as having, I think, fiscal impact or whatever the term was that you used. Is there some reason that you separated the 3 million impact from not proceeding with the modulars from the 4 million impact of the remaining items in Ms. Jackson's list?
Yeah, again, that amount for that startup cost has been approved for this first year, kind of
For the
going
first year.
into it. Yes, it's the ongoing cost that that would be problematic, and the reason why we thought we would bring it here tonight for consideration. But if you're right, if you back out that cost, and Mrs. Jackson, I don't know if you want to shed additional light on
Yeah,
that.
only I thank you. Just to add that I wasn't really including that because it wouldn't help us in the coming year. If we move forward with the modulars, that will have a cost, but that cost will be covered by the $4 million that the city provided for that capital project in the coming year. But the ongoing cost wouldn't really hit us until we started using those modulars, which wouldn't be until the subsequent year. So that's why I wanted to put it on the table, because it's sort of more of an ongoing consideration, but it wouldn't, not doing it wouldn't help us in the immediate upcoming school year, 26-27, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Ms. Apel, do I have time for one more follow-up question?
Yes. Go ahead.
Ms. Jackson, this is I'm not even on the board a year yet. This is a yearly process. This is a lot of new information to digest and plan. Are we otherwise generally on track in the budget process, or are we behind?
In terms of our normal timeline for developing the budget,
Yeah.
I mean, we're following the same kind of process, so I think we are on track.
Okay.
We are just having to to do a lot of things that we don't, unfortunately, in fact, we've not had to do. So that puts us, that feels a little bit of a tighter timeline.
Yeah.
But I would say we are on track. Certainly. We don't have the final word on any revenue. The General Assembly has yet to weigh in on state funding. So this is absolutely still a moving process. But, we felt strongly that we needed to address the challenge sooner rather than later.
100%.
If we get good news from the General Assembly and we don't have to have quite as big of a deficit to fill, great. But I think it is important for us to be prepared kind of for the worst case scenario. So that's what we're working on right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Link. Ms. Trigg?
Hello, I'm just very saddened by the overall cuts, and I know that they're necessary and they're needed. But as we are in the business of working with children, educating them, working with our people, our community, we are literally about to watch everything and all of you all's hard work, all the teachers' hard work, kind of get flushed down the drain when we start losing the resources. Just tonight, we heard an amazing presentation from Mr. Aldridge about the CEC, and now that's possibly getting cut. You're thinking about your middle school and high school kids that need those resources for those activity school buses. And I can almost imagine if we're cutting there, are we going to be having a cut as far as them getting the exposure outside with the athletics and the games that they usually get to go to? How will they be able to compete on the higher level, because our schools are already so large? So they're having to compete against those larger schools. So my concern is when we start having to cut where it affects our children, and which is supposed to be one of the major accomplishments that the mayor did have on the table at his breakfast, I thought was very interesting. And now we're cutting what was the biggest accomplishment that was displayed on that flyer. it's kind of concerning because now we're not thinking about our children. I can tell you since we've gotten community builders, as again was a part of our presentation, it's cut down on our crime rate with our teenagers. We lose those 12-year-olds to 15-year-olds. Every year for the past couple of years, how many families are we hugging at graduation of children that may not have made it through gun violence? How many kids that we're losing due to dropout because they didn't even get to stay in school because now they're behind bars. So my concern is roughly that this is really going to affect our community heavily. And I feel like we came a long way to now get pushed back. How far and at what cost? And are our children worth it?
Thank you, Ms. Trigg. Ms. Quintana?
I just really, my heart breaks that we are here. Unfortunately, this is where we at. It is what's necessary. I agree with my colleague, Ms. Trigg. My concern is crime rate will go up with our teens. This not only affects us, it affects our community, it affects our families. And I honestly do not see anything else that we can do. And that is heartbreaking. And I just want to thank you guys for doing this presentation, doing amazing work, and asking and discussing the hard questions and trying to figure out a way. So thank you.
Can I interject one thing before you move on? Because you made me think of something, Ms. Quintana, that I should have emphasized more, because you talked about anything else that we can do. And certainly, this is the time, and that's why we're going to have a community meeting and the opportunity at the public hearing for the public to share ideas and to hear your ideas and all of that. But I think that's a point well taken, that as we were talking about all the things we've discussed today, only add up to about a fourth of the deficit. And so as Dr. White said, 75% of our budget is people. At this moment, even if we did all of those things, we're estimating that we would still on top of that have to lose about 156 positions, which we of course would work to absorb through attrition, just not filling vacancies as best we can. But even with all that, that's a pretty big number, right? So thank you for reminding me to say that, Ms. Quintana.
Yeah, I'll just jump in there as well, just to say again that so we started this presentation talking about protecting the classroom and trying to preserve jobs, because when we're talking about 156 positions, certainly we could be facing layoffs or something like that, and that's we don't want to go down that path, and certainly we may not be able to save every position, but positions will be impacted across the board, centrally as well as school-based. We're going to try to do as much as we can in terms of vacancies so that they're not, people in those positions who are impacted, but every office across the division will feel the impact of that type of deficit, especially when it comes to the teachers and their hard work already. But the board has done a great job year over year trying to get class sizes down, particularly in the core content areas. And I know we all wanted, more, right? We want to have smaller class sizes. That has been the goal, because our teachers and our students deserve that. And yet, with these types of cuts, then we're looking at increases in class sizes, which impacts everybody.
Thank you, Dr. White. Ms. Watkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And my colleagues said a lot of the sentiments that I was also thinking about. Couple things here. I appreciate you all creating that framework for review of these considerations. We have gotten really good at that from back when, you know, when we were thinking about capital improvements and how to decide, you know, what to do, where. You developed a framework for that that's worked really well. There was a framework when we were trying to figure out what to do with transportation. So I have no doubt that the framework that you guys came up with for this is a good method. So I thank you for that. I also thank you for hosting the listening sessions with the community. I think it's really important that it's recognized that we don't run away from hard times and challenges. We celebrate a lot of things in our division. And, you know, some people celebrate with us and some people don't for their own reasons, right? But there are some really great things that are happening in this division. And I think a lot of it is because we listen. We listen, we're transparent with our community, and we listen to our community. So I'm grateful that we're giving them another opportunity to provide input and to hear, you know, how painstaking these efforts are. I don't envy any of us. You guys are placing our options in front of us, and we ultimately have to advise you on which way to go. So we're all in this together. I have a question, but before I ask the question, I want to also remind everyone, not that you don't already know this, but the community and our city council and our police department and our, you know, first responders, all the people that make up the work that's done in our city and supports our citizens, right? The decisions that we are going to have to make, will impact crime, will impact safety, will impact test scores, which will impact post-grad opportunities for some of our students, opportunities, extracurricular opportunities, and it will ultimately have an impact on our city's economy. As the second largest employer in the city, we are talking about laying off where other businesses already have and others intend to. That is going to be huge for our economic development in our city. I would bet that we're, you know, looking at our city is looking at all of the things that they want to bring in, you know, data centers and other things that we want to bring in, bigger airports and all this other stuff. But all of this to me is tied to our school division. If you one of the first things someone is looking at when they're looking into moving a business or buying a home in a place is you're looking at crime. You're looking at the schools. You're looking at the economic opportunities for work and all of that stuff in these communities. And everything that we're talking about tonight is going to impact that going forward. So I just want to make sure that, you know, we on this call understand that, but I think that our leadership in the community needs to think about the long game here when it comes to whether to invest in our school division and treat it as a partner in economic advancement or not. Now, I know decisions have already been made, right? This week, the decisions have already made despite our efforts, everyone's efforts in trying to ward off, you know, these challenges that we're going to have to face, right? So I may be, you know, blowing in the wind with what I'm saying, but this has to sink in. It has to sink in. And for some people, things don't sink in until it impacts you personally, and it's going to touch everyone in our community. And so I'll get off of that platform. But I want everybody that's listening and everyone who passes the word and goes back and watches this recording, I want you to think about everything that's being said tonight, because it's coming your way. You will not be exempt from this, even if you don't live in the city. Crime doesn't stay in the city. And anyone who shops in the city or travels to the city for it, it's going to impact you. The question that I had is, I have a concern with deferring when, the formula has been changed. As a matter of fact, it's been changed twice or 3 times in the past, I don't know, 2 years, 3 years, 3 times in 2 years. It's not going to get better as far as I can see, right? I don't have a crystal ball, but if we defer these things, Ms. Jackson, are we just robbing Peter to pay Paul, or putting off the inevitable? I'm thinking about, the trailers. I'm thinking about a couple of the other things that you said that we could defer, maintenance. And, I know that we'll do the critical things to these buildings, but most of our buildings are not new buildings, right? And so there's things that we have to do to them, right, before they become dilapidated. And then now we're in a safety issue, right, just for that, right? So I'm not sure how we do this. I don't know about the deferring. I just don't see how that's going to work out. It feels like robbing Peter to pay Paul. And I know we don't have a choice, but it just feels like, pie in the sky, thinking that something might change in the future, and it's only going to get worse for us without a fund balance.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if that was a rhetorical question, but I will answer it. Like, yes, I think you're exactly right. Robbing Peter to pay Paul. So if you defer maintenance, for example, that at some point it becomes a critical issue and you have to address it. So then you're pushing something else off. Unfortunately, we often see pictures of really sad looking schools in other areas across the state. And, the state's tried to put some money towards school construction and that kind of thing, but it's a relatively small amount statewide. So, we've always been proud that, particularly as an urban school division, that's not the case here. It has not been, but I think unfortunately we may have to head in that direction and focus on instruction and put off some of those things.
And then one last point that I want to make, and thank you for that, is I want people, as they come to this listening session, I want people to think about their own home budgets. We can say all we want to, get rid of this, get rid of that. It all touches the students. So if you think, public, that there is anything that we can do that we could cut any single thing that we do that's not going to impact our students' education, you're absolutely wrong. You're absolutely wrong, because I know from being on this board for 7 years that every single decision that we make starts with students' needs. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Watkins. Dr. Jameson.
Yeah, I appreciate everything that my colleagues have said. I agree with Ms. Watkins' most recent comments. I think what I would simply like to add is reinforce just a few things. Education is a project of the future. It always is, right? You are helping to shape the future. And the reality of this moment is that the Roanoke City Public Schools are about to be collateral damage of the fiscal situation of our city, and that's not going to change in the next couple of years. We are not the only system that's going to be impacted by that. But the reality is $16.5 million is a huge deficit for this system to overcome. And so if you can make time to come to the public hearings that'll be hosted in the next week or two, please bring your ideas, internal, external, bring your partnerships. Thank you for your advocacy. Many of you lended your voices at these public hearings with the City Council. We appreciate your partnership. We appreciate your time and your investment in our students. Although we are heartbroken here, I think you can hear it. We are not giving up. This is not a division that gives up on our children, and we will not give up on each other, and we will not give up on this place. So I encourage us all to bring our ideas. I think that the consequences we are facing are exactly the possibilities that we are going to be fighting against. We are not going to stop trying. We're going to keep hoping for some, maybe this for whatever pennies we can get from the state or anywhere else, or grants. We are going to keep looking. We're going to get creative. We're going to get inventive, and to my colleagues, as I stare at my 9th year, rounding out my last year on this board, for all my new friends, what I will tell you is that there are always times of hard in public education. This is not I'm looking at you, Ms. Watkins. This is not our first hard. We will get through this. We will invest in our children. We will invest in our teachers. It is not what we would pick, but we have a vision of the future for our children, and we're committed to it. We'll find a new way. We have to. There isn't a choice. So thank you for everything everybody's doing, and we're in the fight together.
Thank you, Dr. Jameson. Vice Chair Cherry.
Thank you, Dr. Jameson. I am probably the first time that I feel like I am close to being extremely emotional with giving, I guess, my remarks. I think you mentioned that, yeah, $16 million deficit is something difficult that we have to overcome. But let's, and I'm just gonna call a thing, and if I get slapped on the wrist, fine. This is the second biggest thing in the past year that we've had to overcome. We also had to overcome being accused of malfeasance. All right. And when you talk about malfeasance and when you hear the word responsible stewards, those words don't belong in the same pond. All right. We have been nothing but responsible stewards of the funds that we are allotted to have. And it's amazing how the malfeasance just disappears, but now we have to give this $20 million back. It's not fair. But I do want to make sure that the community knows that all of this tonight is about being transparent, because we were put in this position to make sure that we advocate for our students, our staff, and our families. So tonight was about giving context, making sure we give out all the facts, and making sure that the community gets a chance to hear and listen directly from us and the executive staff and our superintendent. I think the biggest thing that we need to focus on at this point is making sure we protect our students, our children, and our staff, because of all of the things that we just discussed and put out on the table. We do know anxiety is going to be high, apprehension is going to be high, and at the bare minimum, the city council put us in positions to advocate. So I just wanted to tell the community and also remind my colleagues that at the end of the day, we were put in these roles to advocate for our students, our families, and I am not going to stop advocating. We're going to move forward, and we're going to do what we can to definitely make these pivots and adjustments, but at the core of what we do, the passion for our children and these students in this community, in this city, that's never going to stop. So I just wanted to put that out there to encourage all of my colleagues. I can hear the frustration, even the faces, I can see it and I can feel it. But no, we're going to stick together because we're one city. So let's just move forward and make sure we continue being those responsible stewards.
Thank you, Mr. Cherry, and for again reinforcing what I think through my experience on my time on the board has been 3 hallmarks of this division, which are responsible fiscal stewardship, transparency, and communication. So again, Dr. White mentioned that there will be a town hall to discuss budget concerns and ideas and whatnot next week. And then also we will have our open public hearing, which was always normally scheduled. That is part of the routine process, as Mr. Link, verified earlier. I shared a number of remarks earlier on, knowing that our discussion about budget was going to be very much so colored by the change in policy implemented by City Council last week and looking forward. I've said before, and I'll just reiterate again, that education is an investment versus a cost. And that mindset is important when you think about what policies you're going to prioritize. And I appreciate what everyone has said to those ends. Dr. Jameson mentioning that it is a future looking investment to think about education. What Mr. Cherry said about our job as being on the board is oversight and advocacy to continue to speak on behalf of these students. And like Ms. Watkins said, we will feel it. And all of us here on the board are charged with keeping in mind what is the best way forward for every student in this division. So I still firmly believe that a healthy and robust public education system undergirds the health and resilience of families, as was seen by the CEC numbers today, because schools are oftentimes one of the few touch points, one of the only guaranteed touch points for families, which also was evidenced by COVID when kids were not in school. And for the city and for the state. So it's really imperative to continue that we use our voice, but also to make that we have difficult decisions ahead. I also was reminded that, I've been in education since 2003, and anytime there was a new initiative, a new curriculum, a new fad, whatnot, I would realize any one of these things is a grand social experiment that we're trying out on our children. You want to try a different, reading program, a different science program, whatever it is, Common Core, if you remember some of that, which I went through in North Carolina. And right now we're looking at financial policies and what that social experiment will have, what those effects will be on our children. So this is not an endeavor that we take lightly, and we do want to hear from everyone because we are committed to being fiscally responsible and helping our staff know every student by name and need and strength, and making sure that our students in Roanoke City Public Schools have access to an excellent education here. So thank you for everyone. And we will move forward together. We are one, as Dr. White says, and that is not just lip service. So thank you to everyone who has used your voice and will continue to do so as we work towards ensuring that our students continue to get everything they deserve. Anything else before we move on?
I'll just chime in here, Madam Chair, just to say thank you to the board for your time and consideration for the things that we've put on the table today. I know that there will be a lot of discussion that will be had about each of these items and others as we continue to get feedback from our staff and from the community and from our parents. And so again, that town hall meeting is next week, February 5th, from 6 to 7. We are holding it virtually, so everyone can kind of join in from wherever they are, and they can participate. I do agree with everything that has been said, and that we are committed to making sure that our students continue to graduate with a diploma and a resume. And so that is not, again, it's not happenstance. Everything that's been done over the past 6 years since COVID has been intentional, it has been strategic, and it has been collaborative. And so we're going to continue in that vein. I asked central staff as well as principals earlier today that this is the time to lock arms, that yes, this is hard, but we can do hard things. And so it's time for us to, again, as we always do, move forward together. I know that everybody will have a lot of questions about the details. Well, how will this work? What does this mean? Who will it affect? And that's what we have to work out together. This decision, the policy change happened last week. So we're going to have to figure out what exactly will land on the table, right? That will be kind of the final that will land on the table. And we'll need to work together to determine the best way forward in terms of working out the details. We can do that. We will do that. I believe in our team. I believe in our teachers and our principals who show up every day and make sure that our kids have everything that they need, as well as all of the support staff that surrounds them to make sure that they have what they need. So we're going to continue along at that level just to make sure that we have high quality instruction in every classroom. So with that, Madam Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. White, and thank you to your team. Moving on to the work of the board and ongoing business, I just want to touch base here that we'll touch base a little bit more about student representatives in February at possibly both our school board meeting and workshop. Regarding communication, part of the work of the board is for us to touch base about this biannually. I just want to commend my fellow school board members for the amount of and responsiveness of communication, especially since December. There has been a lot of back and forth, and really we have been working as a team. So we have been a team in that, and that is much appreciated. And so thank you all for all of your input and everything you've been investing in your positions as fellow school board members. Regarding school board member development, and also that is something that will be discussed at the retreat, which we'll discuss, which we'll mention in our timeline of events coming up, along with board member presentations and attendance at conferences. So those are some things that we will address at our retreat. All of those are kind of to be discussed sometimes ongoing and biannually. So we will look to do that there. Regarding school board member visibility, this was a goal of ours, and community engagement and meet and greets. And I think, again, the amount of communication we've had amongst ourselves as a board is also, kind of reflected in how present we are, including, like, for example, at the barn burner at PH the other night of a basketball game. So again, commendations for that, for really doing a great job to make sure that we are in touch with our community and we are a part of our community and we're representing our community. Some of us were able to attend, it was supposed to be in Richmond, but virtually, Virginia School Board Association conference. And one of the topics yesterday, an entire hour-long presentation was about, do school board members represent their constituents? And I anecdotally say we have a resounding yes here. And then also one of our other items of note for work of the board is, discussing and having conversations regarding policies. And I just want to impress upon everyone that the legislative session is underway. We'll have reports out from that. And also February will be, the next round of policy governance discussions at the division level. So that is it as far as work of the board and ongoing business. Moving on to future business, unless any board members, if I missed anything. Good. As far as future business, I did note that the legislative session is underway, so we'll be keeping an eye on those developments and how they'll impact education in the Commonwealth and at the local level, both budgetarily and with various initiatives. And as far as announcements and reminders, we do have a retreat coming up in a few weeks, along with a school board meeting and a board workshop. But that school board meeting in February on the 10th is that public hearing on the budget, but preempted by that 1 week prior will be that budget town hall. Also of note is our support staff of the year and retirement dinners coming up in April and May. Please make sure that your calendars are correct for those, because for those two particular events later in the spring. And hearing no